It said recording starting soon, but now it looks like it's recording. Okay.
It's recording, yeah.
Yeah, cool. It's like I've never done this before. You're making me nervous, Pablo. Why are you making me nervous? This is ridiculous. It's because I haven't seen you in so long. You came on the show like what, 2021 or 2022, or when did Miles Morales Shockwaves come out? Because you came out to
21. Yeah, 21.
Oh my
God. Yeah, it's been a while.
4 years. I suck at the not just keeping up with people, but like even just from a strictly podcasting standpoint, and like inviting guests and like staying consistent and being like, okay, it's been about a year. Let's reach back. I suck at that, dude. So I'm holding this up. Let me hold this up. I got this. This is one of your first graphic novels.
Yeah.
And this was released in 2021. And in anticipation of having you on the show the first time, I was really excited, and I got it, and I was like, oh, surely I'll show at least my oldest daughter. Nope. She's not old. She wasn't old enough at the time. Shockwaves, Common Sense Media says Shockwaves is appropriate for age 10 and up.
You know, I've read that too, and I can honestly say that I don't think that's right.
Yeah, well, okay.
I feel like it's more for even a younger audience. I want to say like 7 and up.
7 and up. Okay, well, let me tell you something.
Around there, yeah.
Okay, let me tell you something. My wife, I don't expect her to listen to any of these episodes. When she found out you were coming on, she's like, oh, I'm listening to that one. So Kelly, if she hears you saying, you're the artist who drew these scenes, and you only have, a little bit of nudity in this book. No, I'm kidding. There's nothing like that. It says sex, romance, and nudity. It's 1 out of 5. Miles and Kyle may have a mild crush going on. That's it. But the fact that you said it's for 7-year-olds means maybe I don't give this to my daughter on her birthday when she turns 10 in November, but rather this is just a book that's out and allowed for both of our daughters, because we have a 7 and a 9-year-old. So I got Pablo's endorsement. It's appropriate for Charlie. You hear that, Callie? It's appropriate for Charlie. All right. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to ramble about that really quickly. You're here, Pablo. Thanks for coming on. Let me bring you back to full screen here. Can you tell I'm caffeinated? You're here. I reached out because I saw all of the fun, exciting news online on social media that you and your group have been busy and getting recognized for it. So first of all, I want to say in person to you, well, we're not in person, but you know what I mean. Congratulations. It's amazing what your hard work has produced. And we're of course talking about both Remember Us, the short film, as well as Silenced Voices. Which one came out first?
Remember Us came out first. It came out in 2024. It's a short animated film about the Salvadoran Civil War. It was basically about 3 people that lived through this tragic event, and kind of telling their stories, and they're all kind of interconnected through this character. He's a journalist who's sort of like interviewing them, and they're telling them his story. They're telling him their story, and it's kind of a story about listening to what happens to these people and trying to find some kind of like room for hope at the end of a really tragic event. So I would say that came out in 2024. I did work on it kind of parallel, kind of at the same time with this graphic novel. So it was a lot of work. I don't know that I would do that again. But they do follow similar themes because they were at some point the same project. They eventually were split. Silent Voices became this graphic novel. It was I don't know if we should jump in already, but might as well, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can I just jump in and interrupt you real quick to say,
Yeah.
did I hear that? Did I hear that right, Pablo? That Remember Us and Silenced Voices were the same project, and then they split into two different mediums. And how did just help our audience? How did that happen? What was that like for you? Just creative minds want to know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
inspired. Yeah, go for it.
So I guess let's go back to the very very beginning.
All right, Pablo came out of his mom's vagina, and
Mhm.
okay, sorry. Now my adolescent part is up. I'll ask him to settle down. Not the very beginning. Too literal. Okay, go ahead.
This is not for 7-year-olds.
No.
So I grew up in Guatemala, and it's a country in Central America. And when I was growing up there, I was there during the tail end of our armed conflict. It was it was 36 years long. It was way too long.
Jesus.
And it kind of ruined a lot of things. So, whenever people would ask, how was it growing up when I came to the States? How was it growing up in Guatemala? I would say something similar to, hey, we have really great food, great landscapes, great coffee. We have a ton of volcanoes, but, we had this really terrible conflict. And to this day, there's still a lot of problems. And people will be kind of like, they wouldn't know any of this. It would be like, what war? What are you talking about? So that was kind of my inspiration to kind of like talk about this thing, bring awareness to everyone that I was outside of it. Um, and I think during the years, as I learned more about other, the neighboring country in El Salvador, they had very parallel conflict, very similar during the same years. So Central America as a whole was just engulfed in conflict, and in a very specific time, time frame between the 70s through the 80s or 90s, it was just there. So my goal was, okay, I think I want to talk about all of this. And initially that was kind of the original story. It was a book about Central American conflict. It would cover everything. But I think the scope, maybe it was just too large for me
Yeah.
at the time to even like try to like on it. So it kind of read like a history book. And that was kind of when I pitched it. There were people were like, "Well, this just feels like a history book. You could just pick one up." So that was kind of that. And then I started kind of separating these stories and trying to kind of focus on one, on the other. So some characters, these are fictional stories, but they're fictional based on documented sources. So some characters kind of cross over into others. The character of the journalist or Remember Us, which like we are the journalists. He's the window, to the story. Um, he was the main character on this whole thing. Um, then he just became the character on the short film. With the graphic novel, then it was like a focus on just Guatemala, just on the Civil War. And from there on, I during 2020, I pitched it to an agent, and then we pitched it to several publishers, and HarperCollins picked it up. So HarperCollins right now, I don't know how it will change later in a few months or whatever, but right now there's 5 main publishers. They call them the big 5 right now. So Harper is one of them, and they all have smaller imprints inside. So we went through with Silence Voices, with Harper Alley, because they're the YA story. Silence Voices is a YA graphic novel.
Why
But I
just
would
or
say
just
that,
why YA? I got just a couple questions. What does YA stand for?
young adult.
Young adult. Duh. And then
Yeah.
when you say we pitched it, who's we?
My agent and I.
Okay.
Yeah. So in publishing, uh, I would always recommend, if you're able to, find a literary agent, because they will make your life easier. So that was kind of that route that I went. And so with Silence Voices, that was the route. And we sold it in 2021, and it was supposed to come out last year, but it was a very long process, because it's also a really difficult topic. Kind of talking about, it's not just war, but it's genocide, and
Yeah.
the multi-generational fallout of what happens when you leave your country that's littered in conflict, and you maybe are well-meaning, because you want to your child to have a better life, and you want them to maybe assimilate in another place, and you don't want to talk about these things that you went through,
Yeah.
rightfully.
Yeah.
And so now you have this, like, um you're essentially kind of hiding a lot of things from your children, and so you have all these silences, kind of. So this is kind of what the book is about, kind of breaking those silences from what your parents, and trying to understand our parents and our grandparents' decisions on how that came out. So the book is mostly, it's a very, like, easy ease in gateway into not just the conflict, but also this multi-generational world that we live on right now. We have a lot of first, second, third generation children of migrants, who a lot of times they don't know what happens in their home countries or their parents' home countries. So it's kind of like, okay, how do we talk to them about this? So that is the gist of this book, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Follow all of that, and it's really great stuff. And I've got questions that percolate as I hear you talking. The first one is, when you talk about the family, you know, having the desire to protect their descendants, to protect their children, to leave a country that is just being ravaged by greed, aggression, fear. I mean, you name it. The forces, the human, what is in human nature when things go bad. And so the instinct to protect makes sense to everyone listening. But then you talk about the gaps, or the lack of knowledge, the lack of legacy narrative or family stories. And I want to ask about you as you were writing this. Well, actually, there's so many places to go. Apologies. My mind is going to bifurcate this. I'm going to split here into two things, which is, one is just like personally and this material, and then the second is kind of zooming out and the larger process as a writer. With Silence Voices, I know you predominantly as an illustrator. I know you as an artist, and what was your role in? Were you the sole? Forgive me for being ignorant on this. Were you the sole author of Silenced Voices, or did you collaborate with anyone else?
No, this is my debut, technically.
Debut as an author,
yeah.
Your debut. Yeah, and so you picked a material that is connected deeply inside of you, because this is what I'm thinking when you're talking about the children. I'm like, you're talking about Pablo, the child Pablo, right?
I think there is because the book is split into two stories. The stories of these two sisters that from Guatemala that survive a massacre, and they kind of have to, like, they don't get along, but they have to survive together. And then you have the sons of one of the sisters in the in this some kind of present, not present day exactly. It's 2014 or so, and there are some things about the brothers that were integrated from kind of my own experiences. I think for me it was like that hard research headset that I fell into at one point, where I was just like maybe too obsessively researching things,
Wanting to get it accurate.
yeah, and to the point where I definitely did. I may have done a little bit of damage on that end, because when you read too many things that are so painful all the time, it does get to you to a certain extent. And at the same time, I was also doing the short film, which I also wrote, and that one was based on several interviews that we did. But also there was like a research phase on that. So you have all these just terrible human nature shit that just should not exist. War should not exist. But so if you're consuming all of that, it just really does get to you at some point. So there is an angle on the book that kind of, one of the characters is very obsessively researching things. Where it divides from me is on the multi-generational thing. I am a Guatemalan American. But I grew up over there. I didn't grow up here, so it did kind of. There are some things where I don't really feel certain things the way that other first or second generations do, and that was less heavy research, but definitely kind of sitting down to talk to other not just Guatemalan Americans, but like Latino Americans from other countries. And a lot of the times what happened was that they had this feel, and a lot of them shared these same feelings of that they felt like something was kind of like denied to them, like a part of their roots, a part of themselves was like denied from this like wall of silence that their parents or their grandparents had. Like they would never know why their parents would just bubble up and get angry, or have all these weird strong feelings sometimes. And it was like, but what happened? So
Yeah.
that's where it divides on me with me, because I don't have those feelings, at least not as specific as that. So
You don't, but a parent, a grandparent, that it's like you're speaking for. And again, I don't want to be too presumptuous here, but I'm tracking, I'm following the plot here, and it sounds like your interest in the subject, you were inspired to make sense of your own story, but also do a service to other people just like you at different levels of the generation. So your age, but also maybe ancestors, and indeed a gift for descendants to be able to consume your work, to consume the story of Remember Us and Silenced Voices, and letting it be a not just teaching, not just like a lesson, but a wake up call for what needs to happen for someone to be able to make sense of their life, and maybe even pointing out the consequences of what happens when you deny someone their story.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about, my swim lane, of course, is I'm a family therapist. So my swim lane is like intergenerational family processes and dynamics, and what do we talk about? What do we believe about what happened? What are our fears? When you talk about people bubbling up and having angry outbursts, like, to me, it's like that's someone's ringing the bell saying, I've got wounds here. I've got a
Mhm.
lot of raw pain and unprocessed feelings, and I don't know what to do about that. So I'm just gonna fucking yell at you. Like that's and well, so okay, so I want to go back. I know I'm gonna lose the thread on some of these questions that were percolating earlier, but I just want to stay present with you and what you're sharing. You said it sits with you differently than others because when did you move to the States, Pablo?
I was about 14. I moved.
Okay. So a
Yeah,
lot of time in Guatemala. A-
close enough. Yeah, like I don't have a prop. It wasn't a proper childhood exactly like here. Like I was a child when I moved, but not a, more like a teenager, I guess, in some form. So yeah, so a lot of things, very different from me. I definitely miss the being able to go to Pizza Hut, and what is it, the salad bar where
Wait,
they
wait,
where
wait.
they had the red cups.
Uh-huh.
So there were some things that I didn't have, as a first generation. I don't have it because I didn't live here, and so a lot of those feelings are not fully present in me.
Which feelings?
Like the feelings of, like what I was describing, the feelings of having something denied to me,
Yeah,
from my culture, from my roots,
I see.
from my history. Those things I don't fully feel them. Maybe there's something in there, but not the way that others, especially those that grew up here, that they may have those situations, or they just have a lot of questions. Um, but it's not like in, fully just talking about the book. It's not like in Guatemala. There is, I mean, there is a culture of silence over there too, especially about this. What happens in certain situations. What happened here, for instance, is after the conflict, it was just kind of like, okay, well, we're done. Move on with your lives. Let's just pretend like nothing happened. And that is incredibly terrible in all ways. And not just mentally, but just in society. It's just not the way that it should have worked. And so that's why we have a lot of lingering problems that extend from this time. Um, but if you try to talk about, you want to talk about, the conflict, the war, the perpetrators, it's always kind of like, why are you bringing that up? Why are you talking about this? Leave it in the past. Who cares about this? So
Mm.
so there is this like culture of silence around this, because I think it's a very uncomfortable topic, um, that is unfortunately always kind of rearing its face every other time, because,
Mhm.
like I said, a lot of the problems that we have over there, they stem from this conflict. And a lot of the, what sometimes people call it the migrant problem. They also, in the US, for instance, they extend to these conflicts as well. So it's all kind of connected, but
Yeah.
it's also really awkward and uncomfortable to talk about them. So.
That's why you get credit for the courage of not just talking about it, but I mean immersing yourself. And this is one of the okay, all right. Let me plant a flag here and we'll come back to it. Okay. Let's plant a flag. Help me come back to this. What it was like when you were researching and you were like, I think you used the word obsessive, but maybe you're being a little too hard on yourself, but you were going deep and long regarding exposure to the content, to the material of what happened,
Mhm.
atrocities, say. So let's
Yeah.
come back to that in just a second. Um, what you're talking about regarding, I mean, here's what I hear when I hear you. What comes up for me is shame.
Mhm.
Um, Shame when someone says, because you're talking about a large system like a country, a government, and for that system to say, okay, really horrible, terrible, unthinkable, unspeakable things happened, but it's not happening anymore. And so anyone who tries to re-enter that time period, that's not safe to do. We don't want to go back. We don't want to talk about it. Move on. And yet you're saying it's all connected. The downstream consequences of having not integrated and healed those larger systemic wounds and leads to other problems. But the reason why it's able to persist is because of that, the burden of saying, I don't want to go back there. If a descendant brings it up, hey, tell me a story. What happened? No. There's fear of going back there. There's shame of going. A lot of times, and I don't know if this is going to make sense to you or for other people listening, but a lot of times the reason why people feel so ashamed is because they feel like, I won't be forgiven. I won't be forgiven. What I did or what I participated, even if I didn't directly do anything, I failed to do something, and I feel shame about not taking action. So I don't have to be the one like pulling the gun, the trigger, whatever. But when someone feels ashamed, a lot of times it's like, I'm scared of what's going to happen if I have to confront that I won't be forgiven. And that's so deep that persists in the individual psyche, let alone a larger system like a country. And the tragedy is every human being can kind of grok or empathize, understand, like if you feel ashamed, you just want to move on. It's not unique to the culture of Guatemala or Honduras or the US. It's a lot of people have that burden of just move on, pick yourself up, move on. Let's keep focusing on let's stay positive. But the problem with that is that you are ignoring and neglecting these burdens that are a part of your story that are categorically, by definition, disintegrated. And so they end up, it's like, I don't know, it's like having an infestation in your house and you're like, oh, well, we just don't go in that room anymore. Like it's something smells in there, but just close it, keep the door locked. It's like, dude, there's going to be other problems if you ignore that, right? So you should be commended and applauded for the courage of participating in the undoing of that dynamic of let's not talk about it. You're like explicitly saying, no, actually, let's look at this through the medium of art.
I think there's a lot of, especially my generation, we're seeing a lot more. When I say my generation, I mean more like millennials to a certain extent. I think we grew up in a certain time where we kept asking questions and we're really digging in the past. And I think there's a lot of us who are in that kind of in that path. If you see, there's speaking from even for other events or other countries, like for instance, one of my favorite books, and it's also a graphic novel as well, that talks about the Japanese internment camps. It's called Displacement. I don't remember right now the author, so I'm terribly sorry about it. But kind of she talks about that it's similar, very similar. There's a generational outcome from that. Like she talked about is basically talking about her grandparents, her grandmother's time in the internment camps, and kind of revisiting those eras and how those things affect our parents and us. And I think us as millennials, that I feel like that's kind of where we we fell into this rabbit hole of trying to find answers to all these problems that we either heard about or just kind of grew up a little bit seeing it. On what you were saying about the guilt, it's really interesting. And there was a story that I um I heard from as I was doing my research, and then there was the, there's a document built, an official document that documented it was witness accounts, atrocities, and it's really damning. It's called Guatemala Never Again,
Okay.
and um, there was an interview from one of the guys that was he kind of went out to the countryside and talked to people, and there was a particular instance where he talked to this. There was a woman that approached him, and she was like, um, you know, I think I need to go to jail. And he was like, what? Why is that? And it was like, because the soldiers, like, they forced me with a bayonet to like stab my husband, and like, I guess I killed him. Like, I guess should I go to jail? And it's just, yeah, it's exactly. And I don't know if this is recorded, but it's that I made that face too. I was just like, so I think there's yes, there is this feeling of guilt, but it's also like maybe not exactly well explained that they should not be the ones feeling this way. But yeah, so there was a lot of stories that are very similar where there is blame placed, and because of all the trauma, I think it's just not. A lot of times they're not sure if the victims feel like the blame should be on them, and that was kind of like, so this is very problematic, and to that extent, that's why I do feel like to a very large degree, the state really like failed in this case, because you can't just end a conflict that was so massive and then just not provide like any kind of mental health for any of this. So, but that is like a longer conversation.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, yeah, what you're talking about, there's this, I want to share something that's coming up for me as I hear you saying that, Pablo, which is there's this concept in the kind of work that I do to distinguish types of trauma. Let's just use the word trauma. Actually, I'm going to completely back off that and substitute out the word trauma for burden. Okay. Like a wound or a burden, something that happens to you. We could say you were traumatized. The nervous system was traumatized. But what's happening is that nervous system is now, as a function of, as a result of what the nervous system experienced, the person experienced, the nervous system is now carrying a burden. And what you're talking about is someone who is confused about a burden that maybe doesn't belong to them. Right? It's the kind of insidious nature of a burden is allowed to live inside of a person, even though it doesn't. It's not theirs. It's not theirs. It was somehow like they were exposed to it, and therefore it's kind of living rent free in their mind, in their body, and yet it doesn't belong to them at all. Versus a burden that is, say, personal. Like you did something and you know it was wrong and you haven't forgiven yourself for it. And so it lives inside of you rent free, but it is yours. And so it is something that has to be reconciled. So there's a difference between these two things, that one is passed down. In my field, the psychologists and psychotherapists like to call that intergenerational trauma. in the kind of work that I do, which is informed by the internal family systems model, we call it a legacy burden. So when people are going through the healing process, let's say someone who was directly experiencing the atrocities in these conflicts was in therapy, and they were doing their healing work, and they were shutting down because suddenly the therapist asked a question about their past, and they started to kind of shut down because they were programmed to shut down because they learned we're not allowed to talk about this. There's a difference between finding that belief or that fear, finding something that was given to the person by their family, say. So let's say, okay, I'm losing the plot. Let me give a concrete example. Let's say that grandma was assaulted. Okay. And so grandma acts a certain way. And grandma's child, let's say her daughter, picks up that behavior and also acts a certain way, which is like not themselves. They're not social. They're not outgoing, or they're scared to like go out of the house. So they're sort of a shut in. They live. And then the grandma's daughter's daughter. So now we're talking about like the granddaughter also acts this way, but the granddaughter knows nothing about the story about what actually happened to grandma. But the child is exhibiting the same behaviors. So that, in other words, the grandma has this burden, this trauma, this event that happened to her, passes it down to the mom. Okay. The mom kind of replicates the behavior, passes it down to the daughter, the granddaughter, right? Replicates the behavior, but the granddaughter has lived a completely safe life. Went to the library, got lemonade, whatever. Like, nothing bad happened to the granddaughter, and yet the burden that the granddaughter is carrying stems from the original atrocity, and that's what's called a legacy burden. And so, my point is that when people are healing, it's a lot easier to let go, to heal a legacy burden than it is from healing something that actually originally happened to you. And so in some ways, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is the right instinct to follow your curiosity and ask questions and get to the bottom of the story. Because without learning your family's story, you're left in this kind of stuck gap, this place of like, I can't make sense of, why do I do these things? Why do I have trouble, driving a vehicle? Like, let's say, like, your ancestors were, attacked when they were driving. And so they were always just skittish behind a wheel. And then like you absorb that, you know what I'm saying? Am I making sense to you?
Yeah. Actually, you're describing, there's not to like give publicity to something else, but there's a fantastic graphic novel memoir. It's called Feeding Ghosts by Tessa Holtz, I think. It just came out. Actually, it won the Pulitzer just recently, and it's exactly what you're just describing. So, and there's definitely some of it also as well in my book, because it is that curiosity that pushes into, what happened. And so it does, I think, as teenagers, sometimes we approach things in a really weird way because no one tells us. So that is kind of how in the book, kind of this character approaches these things, because he doesn't know any better. He's just still learning. And then he touches maybe subjects or just things that really trigger that, a bit of anger, or all these like a rush of memories. So, but yeah, that's kind of, in some way, that is our inciting incident in the book.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is I'm talking about like just an individual person trying to do their healing work, and yet your work in Silenced Voices and in Remember Us is pointing to No, it's the society. It's the burdens. The burdens are teeming and pervasing the whole society, the whole people. So how do you heal that? Well, I mean, I will be honest with you. Like I was thinking about World War II and what German society did post World War II and the Holocaust. Like, does anyone think that the Germans haven't done their work or haven't done reconciliation and like done their healing? I feel like I mean maybe and maybe I'm misinformed about this. My understanding is that German culture metabolized what happened. I'm associating now to this Family Guy episode of where it's like they do a tour in Germany. They're like, we don't talk about that. You know, it's like they're making fun of the fact that they're like, yeah, no, we don't want to talk about the ugliness. But I feel like there was an actual process where they got it out. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and they were able to integrate what happened. Now, there are Holocaust deniers. That's outside of German culture. Maybe some exist inside of Germany, but I know, I'm thinking of like whatever, Ahmadinejad or whatever, and many more people who are like, oh, the Holocaust was a hoax or whatever. But like, the point being is that a whole society can heal together collectively. Do you remember I think it was the 2016 election before Hillary Clinton was the nominee for the Democratic Party? And I want to say it was like Marianne Williamson. And she in one of the primary debates, she was talking about how Germany did this and how in the United States of America, we get a fucking F-. She didn't use that language, but she was like, U.S. citizens have not done this at all from our history with slaughtering indigenous communities, slavery, the list goes on. So like, and again, I'm not claiming that in El Salvador or Honduras or Guatemala that that work has done either, but your work in some small way is shining a light on the symptoms, the indicators of what hasn't happened yet. And the people who are alive still today, who are not in our generation, who are above us, they can continue to push it away. But that's actually a fantastic short-term strategy to go on living. Go to the grocery store, keep paying your bills. It's an excellent strategy, but it's an absolutely shitty strategy for healing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on my soapbox, and I don't mean to be, but yeah, I want to come back to the curiosity about when you said Remember Us and Silenced Voices were, at one point, they were the same project, and you were digging into what happened before someone said, this is just a history. If anyone can get a history book. You're not going to sell anything here. You got to do something different, right? But like, what is it?
Yeah, it used to be individual stories, because I did spend a lot of time, both when I lived in Maryland and then as I kind of moved around, I spent a lot of time talking to people that, they had left their home countries. Mind you, like, I'm not a journalist, and I think definitely at that point of time, I was definitely worse at asking questions. I think I'm a little better now, but kind of just collecting stories, and for anyone that was willing to share. And it was sort of like an anthology of just people that lived through this, and it didn't have to be anything extremely horrible either. It was just like that's kind of what happens sometimes. Like, there's no jobs, there's no not a lot of money, and you don't know what you want to do, and maybe like the conflict is not affecting you directly, like your family is not getting killed, but your prospects are getting killed. Like, there's no, so
That's right.
you just have to take that hard choice. So there was a lot of those stories as well, and it was kind of like a collective of that. And in between the stories, there will be like this history, kind of like what was going on, just to add context to say the conflict of El Salvador, like what was going on there, why, you know, with they use they have this indigenous language. It's called Nahuatl, and for the longest time it was basically dying. So it was like, okay, but why was it dying? So kind of like giving that context of what happened with this, and then how did it come back, and on, and how is this connected to it? So uh, yeah, essentially, I think that was like maybe a little too ambitious at the time for me, especially where I was, and how I was approaching things, because I think that this is also kind of a very important thing. You could say in some ways it was kind of like a level up for me,
Mm.
and it was that these projects, they take forever to make.
That's an
I think
understatement.
with Remember Us, for instance, the split to split these projects, that happened around 2016. So I started putting together just kind of the rough idea for Remember Us, and that was around then. Um, then around 2020 is when I started writing the actual script, and doing more interviews, proper interviews, and just putting things down. So that was like a good 5 years on there. And then for 2021 to the beginning of 2024, that was our production time. Mind you, this is a 13-minute short. It's animated, so that's why it takes long. But we're also independent, so we don't have a studio, but it's just kind of a bunch of people that I basically tricked into helping me. And so we're all kind of doing this with like uh very little money, and just for the because we like to talk about these stories. So
Yeah.
and so what happened between 2020 and 2024 was that the government of El Salvador became a little weird, and then eventually became a dictatorship, which is exactly what the point of the story of Remember was. Remember Us. Remember that this happened. Remember this conflict happened, so it doesn't happen again. Super easy to say, incredibly hard to maintain.
Mm.
So that was kind of the first instance that happened. But what happened in between those is you can't really talk about conflict and war um, without like the violence and the incredible violence that happens. And so that's why I feel that it was better that this happened now, because while I was working on Remember Us, it was like, how do we portray this violence without falling into like this, like being too edgy, which is, it's fine. I think that has a place.
Mhm.
But I think for something like this, where it's like, you don't want to, it's a very real event, and they're very real stories that happen to people. The last thing you want is to like stir up really bad memories, trigger someone. So how do we approach that without being like, you know, glorifying violence?
Right.
So from that experience, from working on that, as I was working on the book with Silence Voices. I mean, remember, it's like I said, it's a 13-minute short, and so there's a very limited time with Silence Voices. This is a 240-page book. Um, I would say that it's there are moments. The violence is present. I don't shy away from it, but it was like a lot of it is maybe off panel, or we talk about it, we say what happened, but not fully show it. And I think that was, to me, that was the better approach to that. Um, and it's something that if I had done it before, I don't think I would have done a better job,
Uh,
because I was in a different space. I would have been like, no, we got to show the real thing. And it's like, no. I think now where I am is like, I don't think that was the right approach. But I know that other people have made it work. So it's just, I think this is a matter of like how we approach this differently. I mean, there's an animated movie called Unicorn Wars. Not for children, 100% not. Um, and it talks. It's about a war between unicorns and teddy bears, and it's disgusting. It's just like it's so gross. Like there's just like limbs and shit just flying off these like.
So it's like just
and
excessive gore.
yes, and that one is valid that it exists because yes, that's what happens in the war. Like it's like the way that the excessive violence to the degree it just goes to like several degrees that when I was reading all these documents about it, I was always like, but why did you know why did this happen, why did it go this far? And in this movie they go that they show you that extreme. I think for
Right.
and like I said, it's completely valid. It can exist. It's just for me, I don't think that was working because that's not where I wanted to go ultimately.
I
Yeah.
kind of hear you saying you can honor telling someone's story without watering it down, but also without just completely showcasing like one part of it. And because I appreciate that part of you that you're speaking for in a different timeline, that if you had made this project earlier, you'd be like, no, we've got to zoom in on that. We've got to show that. We can't, because if we don't, then we're fucking dishonoring these people's actual experiences. And you were able to kind of find the middle ground and do it in a authentic and tasteful way. Yeah, so listen, I mean, I planted the flag many minutes ago, but I don't think I've asked you the question. You're kind of talking about it, but it makes sense to me anyway now to ask you. So you started doing research in 2016, you said?
Yeah, for the film, yes.
Yeah.
I would say for both. It's
Right.
been an ongoing, like, on and off up to a certain point in time. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a very specific question. As a result of reading some of the documents that informed this work, how did this material show up in your dreams? Whether we're talking daydreams or whether we're talking going to sleep at night and having dreams about this.
Oh man. So I usually joke that I got PTSD from the PTSD.
You got PTSD from the PTSD. You're gonna have to explain that one to me. I'm not following you.
So there was just so much, especially from the documented, the witness accounts, and then there was a lot of photographs. There was and just reading all of this, it was. I think I wasn't prepared at the time, like mentally, to just read so much, like in detail, so much brutality,
Malevolence.
and
Yeah.
it definitely affected me a lot, and that's why the thing is, like, I wasn't present. I think that's what threw me off for a while, because I was like, well, I didn't go through this. It was somebody else, so I should not be feeling this way. So I think what I recently learned is that the way a lot of journalists do it, when they especially when they deal with a lot of difficult topics, they deal with a lot of that, and they just talk about it. They just talk about it openly. They talk it with their family. They talk about it with their therapists, with their friends. They just kind of like let it out. And I think that was my problem, that I was just keeping it in, because I didn't think that I needed to share that with my partner, with my friends. So yeah, I was having a really difficult time. Um, just I was always like in this weird state of being miserable all the time. But again, those things did not happen to me. So it was a really interesting experience. And now that I know how to, like, at least, I don't think solve it, but mitigate it a little bit, I think now I can approach things better, approach other topics with less fear of falling into this miserable state.
Yeah. Well, all that makes sense to me. Now I understand what you mean by PTSD from the PTSD. You're talking about.
I'm sure there's a term for that.
No. Let me restate it to you. You're saying by being exposed to traumatic events that happened to other people, I am vicariously traumatized by witnessing what they went through in such depth. And I hear the logical part of Pablo saying, bro, you didn't go through this. So why are you feeling that? Which is another, and by the way, I should say, me too. We're all human and we all do this. Okay. So I include myself when I say this. All right. That is one of the many varieties of ways in which we deny experience. You just told the story about denying your own misery. You're saying walking around with like low level misery or whatever, right? You're saying you had this part of you that was like, dude, you didn't go through this. So why are you feeling this way? You don't have any right to feel this way. They got to feel that way, but not you. And that sort of disconnects our humanity, and it disavows our what's real, what we're feeling. So I'm associating, or I'm connecting that to the story that was told about earlier, when the child asks his parent, tell me about what happened in Guatemala. And the parent feels a big feeling as about being confronted with this innocent window view into what happened. And they're like, no, then they're denying their own fear, shame, whatever it is, guilt, whatever it is. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we all do it. We all deny it. But I as like the mental health pro on this call and in this conversation, and to our shared audience and listeners, viewers, I just want to say, like, yeah, if something is arising inside of you, it's not an accident. It's there for reasons that make perfect sense. They might just not make any sense to you, but like, it just means that there's a mystery there and you have to uncover what that is. Yeah, so I want to say it makes complete sense to me that you would have that kind of intellectual, logical side of you being like, why are you feeling this? It's like, it has every right to that perspective, because that makes perfect sense. I get that. And at the same time, Pablo's nervous system was being exposed to malevolence and horrifying things. And again, the nature of, and again, this goes a little spiritual, but if we're all really connected, if we're all really brothers and sisters, why shouldn't it evoke that? Right? It's like, that's me too. When you look at someone else and say, just like me, the homeless guy on the street asking for money, just like me. People say, there, but for the grace of God go I. It's like, just like me. We are all in the human family. Why shouldn't it affect us this way? I would say the fact that it affected you that way confirms that you're a member of the human family. No disrespect to your logical part. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it goes that way. I think it's we definitely are in this interesting time where there's a lot of people with influence that want you to believe that you should not have empathy about things, and I think that's also where I feel it's important, not just with my book, but just stories like it, or books like similar, just works in general like it, that show you what other people are going through, and you can kind of just empathize with that. There's a really great quote that I can't pinpoint who said it, but it's something like, justice has no passport and empathy has no borders. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where I'm trying to go with my work, because we have this cyclical violence that happens in the world, and I feel like we're basically there already, and it's like, okay, look at what happened here, because it can happen anywhere near you again.
That's right.
And it's like, kind of just learn to be a better person, I guess. It's a little bit.
Yeah, well, that no society is exempt. No society is immune to what happened.
Yeah.
No one's immune. And let me just say something about empathy. I can't remember. I was listening to a book, and they were I think neuroscientists were talking about the actual like brain circuitry and differentiating empathy and compassion, because those are two really similar kind of feeling states. But a really important distinguishing component of that is that the empathy works on pain circuitry, whereas compassion doesn't. And so this and as like a someone whose day job is listening to people, witnessing people's pain and suffering, empathy, if you're too open, it has no borders, great.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too open, you can drown in that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And compassion is kind of like a life raft or whatever, where you're not getting pulled down in the pain. You're able to see it with sort of love and connectedness, and feeling sorry, not pity, but just feeling sorry. I'm so sorry for the difficulty that you went through, and you can engage that state of compassion without being overwhelmed by the empathic like pain resonance of saying, hey, you and I are the same. We're the same. Like if you lost your mom that way, I can imagine what that's like. And that's horrifying. So I just want to say that, compassion is sort of like a sustainable energy source, and empathy has a battery limit and needs to be recharged. There's probably a better way of saying it, but no knocking empathy. Empathy is important, but it's kind of like a cautionary. Compassion is the life raft that will not pull you down, whereas empathy, if you get on the empathy ride, you can get sucked down. And that's important for people to know. I want to respect your time, Pablo. I know we've got some time boundaries coming up here. I wish we had a longer opportunity to talk, but before, I have to ask you about some, like, let's talk about some of the good vibes, right? Like, again, I want you to, well, there's plenty of territory that we haven't gone on that we could, but I want to ask you about the whole reason you came on the show today. It was because I saw these accomplishments that you were being celebrated for your work, and I want you to tell our listeners about this. And tell us the timeline, I guess, was which piece of work got the accolades first? Was it Remember Us or Silenced Voices?
Yeah, so Remember Us came out in 2024, and we got we won a couple of awards there. We recently won this one called the Imagen Awards, which it's like somebody described it to me as the Latino Emmys, which is pretty big.
But for people listening, Imagen it Imagen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I briefly met Danny Trejo. That was great.
Yes.
A bucket list from that.
All right.
And but when it came out and last year, we were Oscar qualified. So what that means is, out of like the 2,000 or 3,000 shorts that are submitted every year, we qualified to the Academy, and from those 2,000, 3,000, it goes on to 50. So we were in that 50, and then from there it goes to the short list, which is 10, and then it goes to the nominees. So we were in the qualifying state. We didn't move into the short list, but it was really cool. I made that thinking that it was just gonna be seen with a couple of people, a couple of festivals, and then we were gonna upload it online. But there was a really good reception everywhere, and I think that also like enforced a little bit of what I was saying before, where some people that watched the film, they were like, I have no idea this even happened. And then there were others from like Salvadorian heritage that were like, my parents left their country, or my grandparents left because of this. and you know, this was kind of like a bridge that we can talk about this. And so when that happened, I was just like, I don't need anything. I'm done.
Yeah, that's right.
It's made.
That is the award right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
So that one is still making its festival circuit. It's usually like a 2-year circuit. So we hopefully will have that public soon in December. But people can watch it on a channel called Shorts TV. It's on either Amazon Prime or Roku or there's another one, Fire Stick, I think. I don't know, but the channel is called Shorts TV. Um, if you type "Remember Us," it's gonna come up. And then Silence Voices, which I don't know if it's gonna come up.
Yeah, no, it's
With my virtual background, unfortunately. Oh, there you go.
yeah, hold it in front of your torso. There you go.
Okay, so this came out. As of this recording, this came out yesterday, September 2nd.
Congratulations.
So it's thank you. No, it's everywhere now. Everywhere you buy books. This is kind of my a labor of love and pain. But I'm happy that it's out there. It's the weight of my shoulders, weight of my soul, and I think kind of like I said, now I feel like I have other projects that I'm doing that do have similar threats, but I feel like I want to focus also on maybe things that are a little happier, a little for the sake of like not damaging myself too much as I went through with these projects. But I think they are, in my opinion, I think they are really good pieces of historical memory that you can access them and get the gist of a piece of history that feels ignored, and then you can say, okay, I can look this up more. I can read, official things, reports, memoirs, things that, and I can understand it a little better. So, but yeah, um, those are the things, and I if anyone listens to this and they read Silent Voices and if you didn't like it, don't tell me about it. Uh, but if you're really intent on telling me, I'm really active on Instagram, so I might read the message. I'm not gonna reply to it.
Okay, before Pablo the masochist continues, let me just interrupt it. Let me stop this for just a second and ask you. let me let me ask you. Well, again, there's just two things percolating. One is, let's do this one first. Okay, so Silenced Voices came out yesterday.
Yes, yeah.
Yesterday. Okay. Is there a press circuit? What are you doing to help sell books? You got to push ink here.
Yeah. We had a book launch yesterday. We made this really fantastic animated trailer. I'm really inspired by the way that Europeans do their comic trailers. They're usually very like really well animated pieces, and so we made one of those, and I think that's helped quite a bit. But also, it's like 25 seconds of really good animation. So if you like that, watch that. So if you're in LA, there is an event this September, because we're in September now, and this is kind of where we're moving in the middle of September. On the 16th, we have a book event with other writers at Romance in Pasadena, and at the end of September, on the 24th, we're gonna have an event for Silence Voices at Busboy and Poets in DC, and then on the 24th, and then on the 25th, Dreamers in Baltimore. So I'm gonna be there. The book takes place in Langley Park. It takes place in Maryland, so it's kind of like going back home and
Yes.
kind of bringing it out there. So yeah, really really excited about it. Really excited to see how it's received, especially in DC, especially in Maryland. So uh, if you're in DC, Busboy and Poets, I know that DC right now it's like there's a lot of things happening, but hopefully
No,
by
what are you
then
talking about? It's quiet. It's cool and quiet over
yeah,
here.
super quiet. Yeah. So hopefully, but if anyone that listens to this, if they have time, if you're come by, I think you'll get a half-hour version of this banter, just so it's great. But yeah, that's where we are with that right now, and hopefully it does well enough that we can bring it and translate it, and that's kind of my goal. That it gets translated to other, and especially in Spanish, and it leaves the country. It can go to other places because I think for me it's important that, especially that it makes its way down, obviously to my home country, but that it makes its way down. I think that would be the main goal, you know. But yeah, that's where we are, and you know what? Even if it doesn't do well, as long as two people bought it, that's good enough for me. I mean, that's the scam right there.
Okay. All right. Let me stop you again just for a second. Now, I have to ask you. Okay, so that I'm gonna need to go back and listen to this and take down those dates because I was originally not going to air this episode until later in September, but I might want to release it.
Oh, okay.
I might want to release it. Yeah, there's other kind of episodes in the queue, but I want to at least promote it on the show, especially for local listeners who are interested in this. Maybe I can even play a clip of our conversation before the full episode comes out. But I want to ask you, Pablo. I there's two. I have two questions for you. Are we good? Can I keep you for a little longer?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I promise these are the last. Usually I'm a liar, but I'm gonna. These are the last two questions. One, you got to tell our audience what it was like for you getting up in a suit, tuxedo, whatever you were. And I remember you handsome devil at this award ceremony. What I mean, it must have been surreal. Just help people who are never gonna, we're always on the watching side. We're never gonna be, nominated to go up there and accept the award like that. What is that like? What was that like for you?
Have you seen the studio, the show
No,
with Seth Rogen?
no.
Okay. So there's an episode where, if your audience has seen it, there's an episode where they're at the Emmy Awards, and this main character is trying to get an actress to thank him at the stage. So that's where we were. We were in that same places where they do the Emmys, and it was a little. It was a little terrifying for me because I don't really do these kind of things, especially in such a such a large public scene, and especially with so many people that I consider themselves I consider them famous. Like I think Danny Trejo, and like there was a couple of directors that I really liked, a couple of actors I was like, and I assumed that I was just gonna go there for the free dinner, free drink ticket, have a good time, after party, all good.
Right.
And we were the first ones. We were the first category, and so it was really. I was really nervous. I went up there. I went up the wrong way. There was a little pathway to the stage. I was like, I didn't see the pathway at the time because I was just trying to like not look at anyone. I didn't want to be perceived. And
Yeah.
I stepped up from like the side of the stage. It was really dumb. The award, I don't have it on me right now, but the award is really heavy. It looks like it looks like the DC monument, but in glass.
Yeah.
And I got up there and I just had never been in a stage that large before. So I did have like a fright moment, like stage fright moment, and I had a little speech written in case it had
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And I took my phone and I'm reading it, and I'm kind of like with my phone, and I'm kind of like this, like my hand is shaking.
Yeah.
I'm just like, at that point I realized that it was happening, and I was like, I need to just get out of here. And so I just slurred through my speech, and I left, and I and I was just, but it was great because being the first one, it just meant that I could enjoy my time there.
Now you can relax. Yeah.
Yeah, and then once I got back to my seat, one of our actors won the award as well. But at that point, I was just so nerve wracked that I could not go up because she wasn't with us. She wasn't attending it, so I was supposed to receive it. But
on her behalf, and this is, again, for people listening, this is for Remember Us, and she won for best voice actress or voice actor. Yeah, and you were, and so what happened?
I had just come back from because they usually take you around, and they take a bunch of pictures of you with the award.
Right.
And I was just coming back when that happened, and I was just like, I don't know that I can do this again. So one of my producers, he went and he did it great, by the way. He was so much more of a natural with that. But yeah, I think it was a great experience. But it was also one of those situations where I didn't, I as a person, I'm usually like, I want to be perceived up to a certain extent, and that was just maybe a little too much for me at the moment. But still, it was a great time. Met a lot of great people, a lot of people that I admire, and man, yeah, it was great. Good times.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Pablo. That's a wonderful story, and it helps balance out the high vibes with the low vibes of all the malevolence and atrocities. And okay, yeah, I mean, it's and you should be very, very proud of yourself. Are your I don't know the situation. You and I are not that close, so I don't know about your mom or dad or relatives. Were any relatives invited? Were any relatives able to go to that, or?
No, so I live in LA, and I live just on my own. My family is in DC, in Maryland, the DMV area. So no, it was just me and my producers. We are essentially the face of the film.
Yeah.
By this point, but yeah, no, it was fun. It was great. I didn't want to even go. Up to the last minute, I was like, what if I just say I got COVID? I don't know, something. That's the easy one. And then
no, you have to gather your courage, man.
And no, everyone just booed me in. I mean, if I could hear a booing from text, I could, it was definitely all my teammates that were just like, no, you have to come, or you're a clown. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So
I agree with them. Okay, so I did lie because I snuck in a little second question, but here's the final question for real. So what's on you mentioned it a little bit, I guess, which is on what's on the horizon for you? So you have intentions about doing things that are a little bit lighter. And by the way, I can't ask, I forbid myself from asking another question. So I'm going to state this as a comment and just look at you with up eyebrows that you were doing this was the job that was earning your income? Because I'm fantasizing that you're working on Remember Us, Silenced Voices, while also holding down a studio job. And, so that's my fantasy, is that you weren't just only dedicating your discretionary time to working on these, but these were side projects versus the main highway. Yeah.
Yes. I would not do that again.
Not at all.
No, it was you know, I'm not even young, so I can't even say, oh, I was young. No, it was it was just a moment of like things kind of converged at the same time, and I should have, you know, kind of stopped one or the other. The film, no one really asked me to do it. I was just doing it because I wanted to do it. Um, but yeah, no, it was very difficult. And you know, the first 3 months of 2025 were really hard. Just trying to finish the book, I feel like I did a lot of unhealthy things to myself. But you know, uh, I can't say that I would not do it again, because quite frankly, I know myself, and I know that there's going to be a point where it's like, okay, what is going to happen? What can I? What would I want? What do I want to stop to work on another thing? And I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanna put a pin on that to say I hope I don't do it again, but I don't know.
Right. You don't know, because the temptation to honor your passions could be too strong. And not all temptations are bad. If you have something inside of you, I asked some, actually the last guest who came on the show, I asked him if he had any books or whatever. He's like, the book that is inside of me hasn't come out yet, right? That there's something alive in all of us, and whether we get it out or not is debatable, but definitely important to honor that spirit inside that wants to create. It's very important. I'm so glad that you honored it, even though a part of you feels like it was totally reckless, and you savaged your your physical and mental well-being doing so. Okay, so
Yeah.
I snuck that in because it wasn't a question. I just said I fantasize about that. But coming back is, so what's on the horizon? So do you have clarity on future passion projects?
Yeah. So I'm working on two documentaries. One that I it's kind of on the same thread of um, kind of talking about our past in Guatemala, but also the future, like the future generations. What are we doing to help them? And so we follow this artist that um, he's also from a generation, and uh, kind of like what is like growing up there during this time, and what is he doing to make things better for the future. So uh, I'm still working on that one, and also a documentary about this poet that also as well from Guatemala. She's a fairly famous. She's award winning. She's published, and she's also homeless, and it's just sort of um, she's also this mythical person that people know who she is, because she kind of wanders around a park. She sells little trinkets. She would like read poetry aloud to you if you asked her for like 10 cents or something. But she's like an abandoned artist of the time, and so I'm hoping I can put that together soon, um, because it's kind of a you know I think moving away from conflict, but now it's more about the arts, and how that's the arts in the world, and how we treat it, and how some places treat it, and how we treat the artists. And
Mm.
uh, and those are like um, live action documentaries. I kind of moving into that space right now. This is kind of like my first um, shooting experience, and film shooting experience. Sorry, I just
Yeah, no, I know, I'm with you. You said live action.
yeah.
No,
And
no one's picturing a Glock.
no. And I do have another project that is an animated feature. I can't really say much about it, because who knows if it's going to happen. But we're hoping you know to have something for that next year, kind of starting the hype train for that. and it's based on a children's book that I really enjoy. It's very, I would say, it's very timely. I don't want to spoil what it is, but I think people would enjoy it. I think it's for everyone. It's not just for kids. I think it's a hard story, but necessary. And so we're hoping that we can tell it animated, and yeah, we're gonna start kind of pitching that around next year, hoping for the best. I do have a second book that I already started working with, again with Harper Collins, and that should be sometime in 2027, maybe. Things take a long time, so
Yeah.
we'll see how that's gonna go. But it's essentially it's like a post armed conflict Guatemala, but it's not about that. It's more about the certain things that happen in the U.S. It's kind of the connection. There's some connection to that. Again, I don't want to say too much because I don't think I'm allowed to say much. I actually said what it was yesterday at a book lunch. I probably shouldn't have said that, but yeah, definitely there's a second graphic novel coming. So really, I'm pretty busy. I'm trying to kind of keep myself busy from falling into a pit of despair of in general. But I think what I want to do is document these things, document these people or historical moments that I feel are important, even if they're maybe a little small or something that's not necessarily that people may feel that are not connected to, because I think there's definitely a human connection that you can get out of that. There's definitely something that feels familiar that you're like, oh, this feels like it's happening again or something like that. And so kind of revisiting those moments. And that's kind of where I want to take my work, and hopefully it keeps happening. Hopefully I keep doing it, and I can come back and talk about these things again, and we banter about it again.
You know what? And it won't be 4 years. I am so sorry. I'm ashamed. I got to go to therapy and unprocess these burdens of the shame that I feel and carry about letting 4 years pass between the last time you were on this show. And yes, absolutely. I would love to have you on to talk more about your work anytime, not just when you have something coming out. And Pablo, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thank you again for making the time coming on the show. The book is out as of yesterday officially, Silenced Voices, Reclaiming Memories from the Guatemalan Genocide. This is Pablo Leon's debut work as both the author now and the illustrator. Am I using that? It's not the illustrator. It's the
author illustrator.
I always get that wrong. There's some other anyway. And then what was it? Oh, and then I will make sure to promote these events that are coming up, especially in this market. My audience, I imagine, I don't really know the stats on it very well, but I imagine more viewers and listeners are local than in the LA marketplace. So for those events that are happening in DC and Maryland,
if it feels like it's too rushed, don't worry about it. We could just cut that. I need to make a post about it anyway. I haven't done it because I was lazy yesterday. I wasn't lazy. I was like doing other things. But I'll make a post soon. So if you're like, oh, you know what, I'd rather just release this later, just cut that part.
No. I'm gonna release this later. But what I'm telling you is that on the episodes coming up, like I still have to record the pre-roll for my episode that's coming out this Sunday, and on the pre-roll, I will be talking about these events and putting links in the show notes. So everything I can do to help support your work. Pablo, you're awesome, man. So good to see you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Dude, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It was a really good talk. If you have time, to on the 24th at 7 p.m. If you have time, drop by Busboy and Poets. Only if you can. Don't worry about it though.
Dude, the 24th is a Wednesday, and I am available. So I'm gonna put it in my calendar. I will see you there, unless I'm dying or something. I'll be there, and yeah, so great to have you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man.